Hey guys, it's Laszlo Merza, aka the Tinker Dad, and welcome to my newest video. So in this video I will tell you a couple of things about Sensible, which is my pet project. I've been working on it for the last couple of months and already released the first version on GitHub, freely available. And actually it turned out to be quite a useful tool, even when I take a look at my own smart home and home lab. So in the video I will tell you about what's going on lately with Sensible and what development steps I made, what features are upcoming, and what are the latest features I've just added. So if you're interested in this topic, keep on watching. So where do we start with this video? Obviously at the GitHub page. So you will find this link in the description if you are not familiar with that already. Once you open the GitHub page, you can find the section called releases, and there you can... What? 2 weeks already? Jesus. Okay, where was I? Sorry. So, it has been 2 weeks since I released this version, and compared to the first version, to the first public release, there are a lot of things have happened. So, you can see the release notes here, and let's just go quickly through this. As this is basically the second version of Sensible, I decided to base this build on the user feedback I received from various people who have seen my posts on Reddit or watched the video or otherwise got notified about the existence of the tool. So this means these are mostly bug fixes, but I also added some quality of life improvements and decided that it's time to fully support Raspberry Pis. Obviously there's no point in this video to list all the bugs that got fixed and stuff like that, but instead I will just pick a few items from this list. So as I mentioned, Raspberry Pi support is now there, and as you can see, you can download the binaries for different Raspberry Pi platforms. Right now I have full support for Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4. The older ones are a bit problematic because I don't really have access to that hardware, and yeah, I'm still contemplating the idea whether I should support those or not. Actually, if you want to raise your opinion here, you can use the comment section of the video as usual. Anyway, what is the next big thing? So, as you can see here, now multiple instances in the same Home Assistant installation is really supported. Actually, this is something that should have been there in the first version, because it makes it awesome. I mean, you can have multiple Raspberry Pi servers, containers, you name it. And it's just a shame that you need to do some manual hacking and whatnot to make it make those all visible in Home Assistant. I mean, with the first version. With the second version, the problem is gone, and now it's basically plug and play. Now that we are on the screen, I would like to show you something else. So, as you can see, these are 4 different installations of Sensible running on different hosts. So, as I mentioned, I'm supporting now, or Sensible supports now, Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4 builds, meaning the 32-bit and 64-bit versions. So, these are from 2 actual physical Raspberry Pis running, nearby. Okay, and this is just a file server I'm running, so it nicely shows me disk free space and temperatures. Basically, this is just a demo I quickly put together. Now regarding this one, this is a demo application. It's actually running inside the development IDE I'm working with, and as you can see, it shows things like container ID and actually Sensible version. So this one, as you can see, is 0.3. So this is a future version. This is I'm working on right now. And in this version, I'm concentrating on heavier Docker support and providing more robust way to configure sensors. So actually, with the 0.2 version, you still cannot configure sensors in a way that you tell them that, hey, this sensor should be updated every 10 seconds, this other sensor should be updated in like every hour or something like that. But this next version will give you that possibility. Also, it will come with a couple of new built-in sensors, like the Sensible version 1. And having a version number as a sensor value actually gives you a possibility to make decisions like in no-dread logic to use different versions of Sensible differently. I understand this is a niche use case, but it could be useful, and implementing this built-in sensor was quite easy, so why not? Moving on to the next feature, which was requested via GitHub issue. Now Sensible has support for command line parameters. It's not much at the moment, and it goes like this. So just start the Sensible binary with the -h parameter, which will show you the actually usable command line options. As I mentioned, it's not much at the moment, but the framework is now there for future development. And also, actually, these are really useful, especially the second one or the third one. So first one is just this help. On the other hand, the second one will reset settings if you have some already running installation and you need to clean up. Or actually, if you have a freshly downloaded Sensible build and you want to initialize it, like creating the necessary directories and well, a placeholder settings file with default settings, then this is the option for you. The third one will unregister all the sensors from Home Assistant via MQTT. This is especially useful if you want to drastically change your configuration, because if you rename your sensor, change your IDs, whatnot, they will be stuck in Home Assistant and you will have to use Home Assistant UI to manually get rid of those. And actually, if you are just experimenting with Sensible, or for whatever reason you want to get rid of it completely, you just run Sensible with the -u parameter without changing your configuration file, and those entries that are currently in your configuration file and registered in Home Assistant will be removed from Home Assistant completely. Actually, during development, I think this is the most useful option I could come up with. I mean, I change sensors a lot, and obviously this helps me clean up my mess. The last command line parameter will just show the version info of Sensible, like this. As you can see, this is the build that I'm working on right now. And yeah, this was also a requested feature via GitHub issues. Again, if you have a suggestion or would like to have some feature implemented, I strongly suggest you to use the GitHub issues, or as a fallback solution, the YouTube video comments. Between all the quality of life changes and features added, there are two very important bug fixes in this release. The first one, as the release note says, is that logging has been improved, and now it is configurable via the settings YAML file. This is very important because in the first version, Sensible produced a ton of logs if you had a lot of sensors, or actually even with a dozen of sensors, it could easily turn your log files into some gigabyte monstrosities. So I suggest you to upgrade Sensible as soon as possible. The other important bug fix is that Sensible has a REST API. It is in a very early stage and it can be used to control Sensible, like shut it down. It is useful when Sensible is running, for example, inside a container or something like that, but it wasn't really nice that it was turned on by default and it was also running on a fixed port, which could clash with other software you're running on the same host. So now this is also configurable and won't start by default. Instead, it is an opt-in feature. At the last part of this video, we will take a look on the roadmap, which is pretty much visible in the GitHub issues. So, as you can see on this page, there are a lot of items I'm working on. Actually, some of these are already implemented, some are just still on the roadmap. So now we are concentrating on the upcoming 0.3.0 version. The first known issue which I'm planning to address is that MQTT is unsecured. So there is no encryption, nothing like that. The whole data is going through your network unencrypted. Obviously, this should be addressed. Next is something that I want to actually squeeze into the previous version. So every sensor is refreshed in every 10 seconds, which is not good. I mean, there are sensors which barely change their values, why bloat the MQTT communication, and then why flood the MQTT broker with unnecessary data, right? Yeah, this has been already fixed, and yeah, the fixed version is working pretty well. Anyway, support for long-term statistics. This is a request, and I'm trying my best to address this, and this is actually quite useful. I mean, right now the sensor data is just always a value we send over and over and over again, and not really prepared for long-term statistics within Home Assistant. This actually means some changes in the sensor configuration, and I already have a working prototype version for this. Next up, another request, Debian, RPM, and other packages. This might or might not be part of the next version. Right now I'm planning to do that. We will see. I mean, it's a single binary, and I have that code for initializing the folders and the default configuration file. So having a package might not be that huge advantage, but we will see. Plugin configuration validation. Yeah, you can mess up Sensible big time if you mess up something in the configuration YAML file. This obviously has to be addressed and has to be enforced, at least on some level, that you use the same configuration. The next feature is pretty much a low-hanging fruit. It can be useful. I mean, it's a niche use case after all, but still can be useful if you just want to send some data which is a fixed value from, for example, from a container or from a Raspberry Pi to your Home Assistant installation for whatever reason, and this does not change at all. You can have a value field in the configuration YAML for the given sensor, and in that case a script won't be running, it will just send that value over and over again. This was pretty easy to implement, a couple of lines actually, so why not? Very similar is the built-in version sensor. However, this will always send the correct value, the value of the version number and the build ID of the current running Sensible instance. As I mentioned before in this video, this can be useful in case of automation, where your automation has to behave differently based on the version of Sensible. Again, a niche use case, but can be useful. In the final part of this video, I would like to talk about some future plans. So first of all, obviously, is support for multiple operating systems. This is really important, although for Windows there are quite a few different alternatives. But I truly believe that having the same solution for different operating systems is a good thing. Next, I'm considering building a script library. Basically, it's a separate GitHub repository with a collection of ready-made scripts that you can just download and use at your own convenience without trying to reinvent the wheel again and again and again. Next is a feature I would really like to add is script execution via MQTT. So basically it's a reverse operation. It's well, it should provide you a way to execute scripts on the host by sending MQTT messages to Sensible. This could be useful, for example, for controlling your containers or services. Next, I'm really considering moving away from the YAML-based configuration of sensors. Why? This is because having a lot of sensors forces you to maintain a huge YAML file, which can be not tricky but exhausting. I mean, for example, in the example I've shown where I have this file server with a lot of drives, maintaining all the separate sensors for drive temperature and free space and whatnot. Well, yes, it is a lot of sensors I have to maintain manually. Instead, what I have in mind is something like a configuration block at each of the scripts. So you can basically just copy paste your script, modify the configuration block at the start, like the sensor ID and whatnot, and be done with it. You can also move those scripts and remove them temporarily and whatnot much easier if the configuration is in a separate file. Anyway, the last bigger chunk of work I'm planning for the future is even heavier Docker or LXC integration. Basically, the idea is that Sensible should be able to tell you a lot of information about the container it is running in without you having to implement your own sensors. This can be done via pre-provided or pre-written scripts, part of the script library, or internal sensors. I'm not sure, but the idea is there. So this is what I planned for today's video regarding Sensible. If you have questions, suggestions, or found an issue, feel free to use the comment section of the video, or even better, you can use the GitHub page of Sensible, where you can raise issues or even open pull requests if you want to have something modified, updated, whatever, you name it. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching it, and really hope to see you next week with a new one. Bye.